Good evening, all. I hope you can hear me. So, in the last class, we discussed about the introduction to mobile app development. So, we discussed about the definition of mobile apps and how we can categorize the uh, different mobile OS systems that we have. So, we have basically Android OS system, and we have basically the Apple OS system or iOS system. So we can see that there's a huge market for these two operating system based apps, and these are the two main apps which are currently in demand. So out of these two mobile operating systems, basically Android is used by about billions of people, and therefore it is used widely around the world, and therefore app development for Android based devices has a high demand. So in this module, in this part of the module, we will be basically talking about the Android app development. And once we have the space and the time, we will talk about the iOS development. In the last class, we basically discussed about how we can use a software such as Android Studio to build our mobile apps. So Android Studio is one of the softwares that have been, available to us through the JetBrains company, and it allows us to download the setup and install it in our devices without any cost. So you can access this Android Studio. So it is available in the Google, and you can download that by following the specific steps of installation. So apart from the Android Studio, I mean, once you have installed it, you have to have the smartphone emulator working. The smartphone emulator is a replication of the um, I mean an Android device, which works just like the real Android devices in the world. I mean, it can emulate the same functionalities of a real device. So you can test your apps under different types of Android phones. So what I mean is that there are multiple models of smartphones. So, for example, Pixel, Samsung, Nexus. So these some models are available already in the Android Studio. So you can use those available models to create the smartphone emulator, and you can allow multiple virtual devices as a list, and you can check under each phone how your mobile app looks like. So this feature helps the developer to see the behavior of the app that is developed without having an actual phone. Also, we can pair our actual phone to the Android Studio via Wi-Fi. So there's an option currently uh, to pair via Wi-Fi, and we can use our Android phone, and we can set the settings in our Android phone in a way such that you allow the pairing to happen between the Android Studio and that device. So once you have set up, you will be able to run your app in your Android Studio and see its output in your own phone. So if even if you don't have a real device, you can use the smartphone emulator. So real device is also, I mean having the app, I mean if we can observe the app in the real device is also quite important for us to showcase our work in a real device. When we talk about the Android app development, one of the two main languages that are used are one of the two main languages used are a Kotlin language, Kotlin, and we can take Java. So Java is a language which was used until recently for app development. However, now it has come to a state that Kotlin has more demand for app development. So uh, the Kotlin is a more recently released language, uh, more recently released language. So it has been released in 2016, and it is more recent than Java. So so it has been developed by JetBrains. So it has been developed by JetBrains. You don't have to remember these things, but there's a company that developed this language, and that company is the JetBrains company. So Android Studio is also provided by the JetBrains company. So app developers, as of now, have utilized these Kotlin languages, this Kotlin language mostly to develop the app. So Kotlin is actually popular for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that it is operatable with Java. So if you write your code in Kotlin, you can still, you can still integrate Java, integrate that Kotlin code into Java based app that was earlier developed. So if there's an app which was developed using Java, we can adjust the code as source code, and we can import that code into our into our Kotlin source files, and still the Java code will still um, function uh, in this um, uh, still function in and will work in interoperatively with the Kotlin language. So uh, so if there's some kind of a device which works with the Java based app, then we can make changes to that app using Kotlin, and we can use Kotlin to make updates on the app developed, and we can improve the old app using Kotlin language. So Kotlin is a language which is very similar to Java, and that is why we can use them interoperatively. So that means that if if we want, we can replace Java codes with the Kotlin language, and then we can get the same performance. So Kotlin is kind of able to replace Java. So and also, we can use Kotlin in many of the devices which are currently in use. and we can develop apps for those devices using Kotlin. So Kotlin can be used for many devices, many Android devices, and we can use that language. When we have Kotlin and Java, there are specific features that these languages have. I mean, they do have very high similarity, but in some situations, there are some differences. When you are learning about app development, it is important to understand the language used to develop the app. So that you can develop your own app in your own customizable manner. So when you're developing the code, the logic behind the app, you need to understand the way that the Kotlin works, and you need to have an understanding about Kotlin basics, and you need to use the basic syntaxes that are defined for Kotlin to implement a certain algorithm in the app. I think we discussed about Android Studio in the last class, and basically in a certain Android app project that you are developing, you have to have basically, I mean, there are basically two files. We have basically two files. One file is known as the activity file, right? One file is the activity file. So in Android app project, there are basically two files that are used to develop the app. One is the activity file, and one is the XML file. One is the XML file. So I think I will say, like, there are many Android app development files, right? So there are basically two files that are used for Android app development. So this Android app development can be done using two files, activity file and the XML file. The activity file defines the basic logic behind the app, defines the basic logic behind the app, and that basic logic is given through a certain code. So in that certain code, you define the logic and you write that code using Kotlin or using Java, Kotlin or Java, whatever the program language you use to develop the app. So this is a code file, and this activity file is having an extension of .kt, or if it is Java. So the source file will have the format of .kt or .java. If it is .kt, that means it is Kotlin based code. Otherwise, it is the if it is .java, it is the Java based code. So this XML file is a markup file that is written using the markup language. So markup language is used to compile this file, XML file. Markup language is used to create this file. So markup file is used. It is having extension of .xml. It's having the extension of .xml, and the .xml file contains the styling of the app user interface. The style of the interface that we are developing, user interface that we are developing, we define using this XML file. The style of the app or the interface of the app is defined basically using the XML file. So XML file has basic parameters XML file contains the basic parameters that define the appearance of the screen. The appearance of the screen is basically defined by this XML file. Appearance uh, is basically falling under the XML file. So those are the basic things, I mean, related to this Android app development. And there are basically two files, activity file, XML file. So once you open a sample project, you will see these files popping up, right? So once you start a new project in Android Studio, you will find these two example files available to be used. So basically, I mean, you need to you need to start with the simple most project in the Android Studio in order to test whether it's functioning properly. You can go to new, then you can go to project. In there, you will be given some sample templates. So you can select, as of now, you can select the template empty views, which gives you the most simplest sample code or the simplest app that is developed as a template. So the simplest app can be accessed through that. So you need to run as the first step that you do with the Android Studio. First, you need to run the sample code, and you need to check whether there are some errors that appear in the command line. So you need to check whether there are some errors, and if there are no errors, then you can actually proceed with the rest of your own design. There are some errors. You need to first resolve these errors, and until you resolve these errors, you will keep on getting the errors. So first you need to resolve the errors, and then you can develop your own design. So one of the errors that you can have initially is that basically you will if you haven't configured your smartphone emulator, right? The smartphone emulator, if you haven't configured that, you will get an error, which means that you cannot see the output of the code. And then again, another problem that might arise is that the target API or the target API that you have defined, the target API that you have defined for the app you develop may be lower than the one that is expected from your app. So what I mean is that there are like API levels that you can define at the design level of your app. So what I mean is that when you design an app, you need to define up to which API level the app that you develop is working in. Uh, so there are basically like API levels that you need to define when you're creating this new project. When you're creating this new project, you will see that you have to define a minimum SDK level. Minimum SDK level. So the minimum SDK level corresponds to the lowest API. The lowest API that the app will work on, right? So the minimum SDK level must be the lowest API level in which this app will work on. And there are other, API levels. So if we take the target API is the API level that we are trying to reach. So the app that we develop must be compatible with the target API level as well. This target API level could be a higher value, right? So this lowest API value could be 24, 25, 26, that kind of a range. So which means that in the current market, most of the phones are working with 24, 25, 26 level of APIs. However, so because of that, we can set the minimum SDK level as 24, 25, 26 range, basically. When we talk about the target API level, or the API level that we should target when we are designing the app is known as the target API level. So this target API level should be a higher value than the minimum API level. So the minimum API level is like 24, 25, 26, something like that. So the target API level should be higher than this lowest API level, right? So when we set the target API, it should be some kind of a higher value than these values. and it could be 33, 34, likewise, right? So if you don't have this target API level correctly defined, the system will give an error saying the target API level is not sufficient. So in that case, we need to go to the Gradle file. We need to go to the Gradle file in the Android Studio. There are Gradle files. So we will talk about the Gradle files, which are basically the files which are used to compile the code in the app, in the source code of the app, and check its output. So these Gradle files are used for compiling the code. So we can check the Gradle file and we can set the API level to 33 or 34 as suitably. And we can sync that value with the rest of the files. And then afterwards, we can recheck the code and whether it's functioning correctly or not. So if there's no error at that moment, that means the target API level that we have set has been a correct and a proper value. So that means that once you don't have any error, then that means that we can run a sample code or another code in the Android Studio without any other problem with the studio itself. So once we have set up the initial configurations of the project, we can run the sample code. We can test it output in the smartphone emulator. So one thing as another thing is that we need to observe that there are mainly three components uh, for a project that is in the Android Studio. So in the Android Studio, for a certain project, right? For a certain project that you build, there are basically three components. One being the activity files. Second being the resource files. Third being the Gradle files. These are compiling files. So the activity files are used to define the interface and the logic behind the screens, right? So the screen, the logic, or the performance of the screen is defined by these activity files. The performance of the screen is defined by the activity files. By changing the activity files, we can change the performance of the screens of the app. We can change the app's screens using the activity files. And the resource files that we have in the Android Studio allow us to store the necessary resources that are required to build the app. So they allow us to store the resources that are required to build the app. So it stores resources such as images, videos, other things like audio files. Likewise, it allows us to store resource files that are useful for the app development. So the app can be developed and its features, the interface design can be adjusted using this or updated using these resource files. So it could be images, videos, audio files, those can be added to the design. So we can find those resource files under the resource tab in the project. So the Gradle files are basically the files which are useful for us for compiling the code, compiling the source code of the app. So it allows us to compiling the code of the source code of the app, right? So uh, the app source code will be compiled, and it also helps us to maintain the dependencies between different libraries and different interfaces. So uh, um, and bridge the gap between those different interfaces and different libraries, such that the app can be compiled. So although I have shown in this classification, in the actual Android Studio, you will get all these files in like in the directory of the app. So you can find the activity files and the other two types of files in the directory of the app. So in the Android Studio, we have like an interface like this, and in the left side we have the basically, I mean, let's say this is the menu bar. So if it is the menu bar, we have on the left top corner a section where we have the directory of all the files in the app. So if once we have a certain directory in here, inside here, we will be able to find the activity files. We'll be able to find the activity files. So activity, then resource files, and then Gradle files. Gradle files. So all these three components can be found, I mean, can be found in this directory. You can access those files using this directory. So do you have any questions so far? So it is XML file. So one student is asking about the .yaml file. Actually, it is not YAML file. It is the XML file. XML. So it is the uh, file which gives the layout, or it gives us the appearance of the, right? It gives us the appearance of the or the appearance of this file. So XML file. It is XML file is a file which is written using markup language. Uh, and it is used to define the design of the screen, design of the uh, user interface. So we need to use this file to define specific parameters easily, especially the parameters such as the height, width, or like the background color, color, those things uh, can be defined using this XML file. So, I mean, basically, like this file, I mean, so if you if you are working, I mean, with resources, you can import several resources into this file. You can import several resources into this file, but if you are working with, I mean, if you are, so the second question you're asking, this one of the student is asking, is that whether we can handle the dependencies through this file. So for that, we have the activity file, activity file. define the dependencies between, different libraries and, different libraries and the code, right? So the activity file defines the dependencies and the depending libraries. So is it okay for you? So XML file does not explicitly have such features. It has features of defining the elements or defining the design of the elements that we are designing in our app. So in our app, we have when we design our app, we have to decide. Now, if this is the screen, if this is the screen of the app, let's say it's like a rectangle like this. We define different components in here. And in here, these components we call as views. We called as views. So if we have a text inside this view, we have text view. Text view. So if it is having some text, let's say A, B, C, D or something, this is if it is some text that we import here, then it is a text view. If it is a button, if it is some kind of button, then it is a button view, right? Button view. If we put a image in here, we have a certain image, then we call this image view. Image view. Each of these views have their own height and they have their own width. So also, I mean, there are other parameters that define these elements. So you can define the color, you can define the text size. Those things can be defined. So text size, text color. So can be defined. Apart from that, you can define the background color and other attributes are also there. So those attributes are defined in the XML file. The XML file has all the information regarding the width, height, and other features of the views that are included in this interface. So we will start discussing about the Kotlin language. So in order for us to, work with the app development, we want to use the Kotlin language. So I mean, you can use Java language also. Um, like Kotlin is a language which is recently released and used. So many, experts in the field, they use, Kotlin to develop apps in their like companies and in their workplaces. So many experts use the Kotlin language as their choice of app development language as of now. So it is a choice of many experts. So therefore, since Kotlin language is used by many of the people as of now, it is recommended that we also, use, language like Kotlin to develop the code. So, Java language is older version or old or like outdated or not that recent language which is used for app development, but it is also a very important language for app development, but it is now not that it is not that new. The new language is the Kotlin language. This is the most new, and it has more resources for you to learn about, I mean, for everyone to learn about the Kotlin language. So there are many resources that are available for us to learn the language and also implement it. Because of that, since a lot of resources are associated with this Kotlin language, we can we can easily start learning those languages, right? So in the last class, we discussed about a small sample, app development case where we defined a small an app. It's like a very basic app which was controlled using the Kotlin language. The logic behind that app was basically to change the text output that appears here once we click on the buttons that we have in here. So we have button 1, button 2, and once we click these buttons, a corresponding text will appear here. A text that is customized for each button will appear here. So that function will be enabled to the Kotlin code. So in the Kotlin code, in the sample code, we basically defined inside our sample code, we have basically first in the Kotlin file, we import the necessary libraries. And then we have the, first we have the package that we have defined for our app. And then secondly, we have the import of the libraries that are required for the code. And then we define the class that is required for us to, develop the code. And the class can be yeah, the class file can be accessed, and we can define our logic inside the class file. So the class file, inside the class file, we can define the logic, and you can find the code, the files uh, in the under the activity file, and you can find the code there. So this is the activity file. So under that, we have the class, and basically there are other like uh, terms in here. And inside the class, we will define the logic. The definition of the logic for our app can be defined underneath the class. So inside the class, we have some several, like sample codes, which we can actually we can actually see, such that we have uh, uh, inside the class we have a function called onCreate. We have a function called onCreate, and inside onCreate we define the basic logic of the app. So we can see the sample code once you create a new project in the studio. So inside onCreate function, you can define the logic of your algorithm. So logic can be defined here. So the logic you can define in a certain order, right? So the logic you can define in a certain order. So you will be able to uh, just you will be able to define the uh, for example, the variables first. So once you are defining the logic, you will be able to define the variables first. Define the variables first, and then you can define the functions. You can define the functions that are used to um, implement the algorithm. You can define the functions. Thirdly, you can define the algorithm or the step-by-step process that the algorithm needs to follow. So you can define the algorithm step by step. You can define the algorithm step by step. And once you complete these tasks, you will be able to run the code and compile, run, and test the code. So do you have any questions so far? Right, so we will see this I think I have already like discussed this in the last class, so I think you can also refer that. So what I want to say is this is kind of like the procedure when you want to develop any app. You can, you can follow these steps. So the variables, when you are defining, you need to, see, so you are going to use the Kotlin language. So you need to know how to define the variables using the Kotlin language. And you need to know how to define the functions using Kotlin language. Then you need to know how to use those functions and use those variables in the algorithm that you are going to develop, right? So you need to know how to define the variables and the functions, and using those variables and functions, you need to know how to build an algorithm which works like step by step. So in order to do that, we will have to learn the basic syntaxes of Kotlin and how variables are defined in Kotlin. So uh, we will discuss about the Kotlin basics, and we will then try to implement that in the Android Studio, right? Kotlin basics. So one of the features of Kotlin is that there are basically, uh, so as I said before, we need to define the variables first. So we will discuss about the variables first. So the variables can be of mainly two types. So one type is the val type, or we call this as immutable type. Immutable, immutable type of variable, which means that it is unchangeable. This is unchangeable, which means that once you define a certain, uh, uh, let's say you are defining a certain variable using val type, val name, let's say it is Jennifer, then if you are going to write the next code, val name equals John or something, then you will get a certain error because you have already defined this name variable as Jennifer. So you will most probably get an error. We can check this once we check our codes in Kotlin. So what I wanted to mention is that that once you use the val type of variables, you cannot change the you cannot change the type of the variable. One thing, you cannot change the type of the variable, and also you cannot change you cannot reinitialize the variable. You cannot reinitialize the variable, right? Do you understand? So you cannot redefine the type. Once you define it for the first time, that first type will be taken as the type of that data for of for that variable. So if you are going to redefine this name variable using maybe some numbers or something, then you will get an error. So the type cannot be changed once you have already defined the variable as belonging to a certain type. Could be string. And also you cannot reinitialize the value of the variable. So if you have first set it as Jennifer, you cannot reinitialize it to John. You need to keep with the same value in here. So that is one type of the variables. Another type of the variable is the var type, or the var type of variables, which means that these kind of variables are mutable. These kind of variables are mutable, and this means that they are changeable. These are changeable variables, right? These are changeable variables, which means that we can change the value of this variable from in one location, and then in another location we can change the value of the variable. For example, if we say var of score, right? Score is the variable name. Var of score is 10. Then we can say in another line, after writing several code lines, we can say again that the score value is getting increased by 1. Once we say this, once we give this command, there will not be an error. There's not going to be an error because this variable type is a varying type. So this score value can change, and at each time we change the value of the variable. Apart from that, so the main difference in here is that in the value val type, you just fix the value of the variable. In the variable, the value of the variable is varying. So those are the basic two types of variables used in Kotlin language, right? So, um, so when we take the uh, like the different uh, when we take the other main point, so each of the variable that we define, each of the variable that we define need to be defined explicitly, right? Need to be defined explicitly. Uh, or else, uh, or else the IDE will assign a variable type on its own. So the IDE will infer the variable type on its own. right? So what I mean is that if you are defining a certain variable, you need to give the type of the data, right, of that variable explicitly. If you want to define a variable, I mean data type which is not that visible, which means that if you want, you can define uh, certain, I mean you can like for example, uh, you can say that value, I will say value I is of type int. So the variable I is of type int or integer data type, which is, let's say it is equal to 6. If we are going to again assign the value of, I mean, let's say if we have another, I mean, if we want to convert this variable I into another type of data, so we need to do that using a command such as, I dot to byte, let's say, right, to byte. So if we want to change the data type from int to byte, then we can use this command and we can say I to byte, and then we can get the like output in byte data type. So if we want, we can change the data type of the variable using this command to byte. So this is like a way of changing the data type. However, like once you're defining the variable, each time you need to define the type of the variable. Could be int type or integer type. It could be other types, such as like there could be other data types for that can be defined for this variable. So there are basically, I mean, different types of data that we use in programming languages. So those data types can be assigned to the variable. So that assignment has to be done when we are using this Kotlin language. So if you don't define like this, if you don't put this I mean data type, if you don't define it in here, then the ID will automatically take this I as an int value. Will automatically give a default data type to the variable by observing the output of the variable. So if the variable I looks like an integer, then the system will automatically uh, define the variable type as an int type. So that is what is meant by inferring the data type. So when you talk about the different data types, there are multiple data types that are available with the programming languages. So when you take the Kotlin language also, there are I mean types, basically, that you can assign to variables. So so when you take integer numbers or integer type um, I mean data types which can be denoted using an integer, that we can we can also categorize into different integer data types. Integer data types are of basically long data type. So so this long data type consumes 64 bits in the memory, and it can be used to give negative to positive numbers from -2 to 63 up to 2 to the power 63, right? So this data type can give negative or positive values. I mean, this range includes both positive and negative numbers. And so the positive and negative numbers can be denoted using the 64 I mean bits, right? Using the 64 bits. The first bit the first bit is out of the 64 bits is used to denote the sign of the integer, right? So the first bit or a certain bit is defined to decide the sign of the value of the integer value. So the first bit is used to define whether it's plus or minus. So plus or minus, or whether it's positive or negative, is defined using this first bit, and the rest of the bits are used to give the value of the negative or the positive value. Right, in here we have 2 to the 64 power, which means you can have 2 to the 63. I mean, we have 2 to the 63 points in the available in the memory to define the value of that we want. So long is the longest integer data type. It consumes the highest bits amount of bits. If you have int data type, it has 32 bits. If you have the short data type, it consumes 16 bits. And if you have byte data type, it consumes only 8 bits. So the smallest data type is byte. The longest or the largest data type is the long data type. So you can use all these data types to define a variable when you're defining in Kotlin. So basically, these are the integer data types that we can use when we are defining an integer type variable. If we are defining floating type variables, we can use different other types of variables to define that. So if you are using floating type, if you want to define a floating type variable, floating type variable can be defined using data types of double. So data types, floating number data types can be classified as double, float, character or char, and then Boolean. So the double variable type consumes 64 bits, and this contains 32 bits. And third one, the character variable type contains 16 bits. And this contains Boolean one contains 8 bits. So it consumes 8 bits of memory. So when you're talking about these, 64 bits, we can have up to 16 digits of accuracy. 16 digits of accuracy in the decimal number. So what we mean here is that you can have a decimal number. You can have a certain decimal number with floating points. You can define that as 1 point, some kind of number, 74, some kind of a number. So up to 10 to the 15 power, you can give the precision up to 10 to the 15. You can give the precision of the decimal number up to 10 to the 15 amount. So that is what we mean by the 16 digits accuracy. So that is the double data type. So once you are defining a variable in the double data type, you can achieve a precision of about 16 digits. If you use the float data type, the precision level will be up to 6 to 7 digits. So up to 6 to 7 digits, you can define precisely using the this float data type. So 6 to 7 digits of precision you can achieve using this float data type, right? So 6 to 7 digits you can define. In here, you have the character data type. So character data type is used to define different characters of 16 bits. So Unicode characters um, are, are defined using these character types. So Unicode characters can be defined using the char type. The Boolean data type is used to define the true or false, and that true or false can be defined using 8 bits. So that those are basically the data types that we can use to give the that we can use to assign for floating numbers, for example, and we can therefore explicitly mention the data types using these double, float, char, uh, boolean uh, terms. So we can use these terms. Otherwise, if we don't define that in the code, the whatever the IDE that we are using will infer that on their own. We don't have to define it. The studio will automatically define a certain data type. So the studio will define a data type to the variable each time we are defining a certain variable. Another thing is that once we are defining long numbers, so once we want to like once we want to define a variable which has many numbers, such as, well, let's say 1 million. So the variable name is 1 million here. And if I want to say a big number, we can put underscores and we can define the digits with the underscores. So let's say it's 1 million. So it's going to be 3. So in here, we are having underscore. We can type the number like this. So likewise, we can use underscores to make the definition, this assignment very easy. So value, right? ID number, right? ID number, whatever this definition you can give using this underscore. So we can do like this. Do you have any questions so far? So we talked about the string types, data types, basically about the numbers. So data types, we talked about the integers and the floating numbers. So the floating data types. So now we can define the string data types, the string data types. The string data type we can define using val. Let's say any kind of a variable name s1. Then we can say hello world or something. We can define as the variable value. Then we we can also, I mean, once we are defining like this, we can also include certain characters like this, like hello. Then at the end you can define the character like /n to give new line, to go to a new line after typing this hello, right? So once you give this -n, then automatically once that compiler runs the code, it will type hello, and afterwards the compiling like point will go to the next line. So so when we talk about the strings, there are so many other functions that we can do on top of the strings, and how we can obtain values like using methods or different methods. So there's a method called string concatenation. String concatenation. String concatenation. So string concatenation means that once you have a string, you can combine two strings using this concatenation, right? So if we take, for example, I have some kind of variable, right? We have some kind of a variable that we have earlier defined, and that variable, let's say, is x, or some kind of y or something like that. So the value of that variable we can define anyway. Like, let's do the concatenation first. So if we want to combine two strings, we can use the plus sign basically. So we have the concatenation. Then one thing we can do is we can say S1 plus S2, right? So we can just basically add the plus sign to concatenate two text or two strings, right? We can concatenate using the plus sign. So when we want to include more information into the string, we can use the dollar sign. So right, so we can what do you call this, the string templates, we call this the string templates. So string templates can be used to include variables or values of variables inside a string, right? We can include variable values inside a string, right? Inside a string, if you want to include the variable values, then we can use the dollar sign. You can use the dollar sign to do that, right? We can use the dollar sign to include the values of the certain variables, right? So for example, we can say that we have a certain variable of a string type, and then let's say it is ABC. So we have a string type like this. And if we have a string of name, this is the variable name, and let's say I want to obtain the string, the value. I want to write some kind of sentence like this. Let's say I want to get the final string as the length, right? So anyway, like yeah, so we can say that the length of the we can define a string like the length of dollar sign S is the length of dollar sign s is, let's say, dollar sign s dot length, s dot length, uh, and I will put some brackets in here. So can any of you can say what will be printed if I try to print this line? There's a dollar sign here with s. There's not there's no much of space between this dollar sign and s here. So can you say what will be printed once I write this string and once I try to print this string? So I mean, so basically the length of dollar sign s means like it gets the value that is defined for s. So dollar sign s means the value of s. So value of s is ABC, right? Value of s is ABC, right? Whatever the value of s is ABC. So it is a string. This data is a string. So the value of the string is ABC. And then the length of this ABC string is basically 3, right? So string, the length of the string can be measured through the characters that are inside the string. There are 3 characters inside the string. So there are 3 characters, and therefore the length of this string will be 3. So the final output that will be like that we will be able to obtain is that the length of ABC, the length of ABC is equal to yeah, the length of ABC is 3. So since this is all like a string, they will all will be in this string manner. So this will be the output that we'll be able to see if we print this one. So we'll be able to get an output like this, which is the length of the ABC is equal to 3 or is 3. So this is the output that we will obtain. The length of ABC is 3. Right? So this will be the output that we'll be able to obtain. So we will now actually try to like implement the codes in the Kotlin repository in the Android Studio. So until I configure that, I will share the attendance OTP or the attendance. Okay, right. So if you can see the screen, please like mark your attendance.
以色列
So we need to first check the Kotlin code in the Android Studio. So for that, we need to go to the Android Studio, and once you open the new project, you have to select No Views, and then you can create a Kotlin file in there. So go to like New Project, right? New Project. Go to No Views and create your file. And then once you create the file, you will be able to access the um, directory, and there you will be able to create a new Kotlin file. New Kotlin file you will create, and in that Kotlin file you will run the code. You will write the code. So let's do that. So let's go to the Android Studio. Like try to get the new project. So I'm currently changing the background color. So first go to new project. You can go to no activity, because we are going to try out a Kotlin language basically, and we are trying to execute the code only. So we will start with no activity, and we will go to the next sections. You can define Kotlin exercise or something, right? Some kind of Kotlin sample codes or Kotlin basics, let's say. So after that, you can actually make sure you can finish in here. So in this layout, you will be able to see this file. So I think actually I created a new file, so that is still loading in here. What you saw before is one I have already made before. So this it takes some time for a new project to load in the Android Studio. So in this left corner, you will be able to see all the directory of all the files that are used to create the app or the code. So you can access those directory, that files and the directory using this left pane. So until so you can see that the project is still building at the bottom of the screen. So if there's something already building, then you will not be able to run anything while it is building. Also, then you will be able to have like the terminal where you can see the outputs in here. The terminal outputs you can observe. So if there are any problems, you can observe in this problems tab, and in the terminal you can see the output of the code. So in here you can actually go to Java. Uh, so you can go to this file first. You can right click new, and you can select Kotlin class file. So I will write Kotlin Basics version 1. So once you have like once you have created the file, you will be left with this kind of a um, this kind of a uh, file. So we don't have to use these class files for the moment. We will not need them, so we will remove that. So first we will try to run simple most functions in the Kotlin. So you can define a function using the word fun. Fun stands for function in Kotlin. So you can define a function called main. So main is a special function. It's not like a very customized function. It is a special function, and main contains the main logic of your code. So the main logic you can define use in here. So fun means function. Main means the name of the function. These brackets can be placed in anywhere you want, but you can place them in a specific location each and every time, so that your code looks the same whenever you are defining a function. So if you want to print something, you can use the command print ln, and inside you can write hello Android devs or something like that, Android users. So let's see whether this works. I think sometimes errors might come because uh, because of any kind of other issues, right? So if you run in here, you will be able to see the outputs. If there are errors, it will show in here. Error means like in here, it says the API level that I have defined is not up to the value that is expected. So I'm going to change the API in here, and I'm going to just sync it with the other files. So that is something that you can do to resolve that error. Once the output is changed, once some kind of change has happened, it will show in here. And then you can run the code in here again using this run button. You can run it, or else you can run using this run button here. So once you run this, okay. So so I think I will like remove this also. So now we got the error solved. So earlier I have kept the package name there, so they are not recognizing the package uh, correctly, and it is not related to the code that we are typing here. So you can see the output in printed in here, basically, which says the whatever the string that we have mentioned here. So you can use this basic function to check whether your print function, print command is working. So that is basically regarding the print function. Then you can insert comments. You can insert comments into the code using the double slash forwards double slashes forward slashes. So print function can define using println. Then we can we can also define other types of I mean data and types of variables. So we will try to define a list or array list. We'll say array list. In here we have value. We will say it's value, my list, right? My list is the variable. And then the variable type I can define as the list of integers. So I can give the type of the variable as list of integers, and I can give that data type by after the colon. So this feature is different from other languages. In other languages, you first define the data type and then you write the variable name. In Java, for example, if you are defining some kind of a string value, then you are going to say string name equals Jennifer or something, as we discussed earlier. So in Kotlin, we define the same thing, but in a different manner. We define it in the way that we define it like val. If the variable type is val, or it's not changing variable, then val name, and then if it is string, we can define it as string, and then we can say Jennifer. So we need to use the colon in here to define the data type. So after the variable name, we need to use the colon to define the variable data type. Then the variable value we can define after the equation, and then we can remove this line because it shows that there's some error there. I'm going to remove this also for the moment, and I will try to run this. So there's no error coming. So that means this definition has been correct. So if I want to define a list of values, then I can define that list as I said, like my list, and then I can define it as a list of integers. List of integers which has value of list of integer values that comprise of like different values like 34, 12, 101, likewise. So likewise, we can define a list of integers using Kotlin. So there's a function called list of. You can use that and you can define the list. If I want to get the last value of the list, in Kotlin, you can do it in different ways, but there's a like easy methods also to do that, right? So either you can write inside the brackets like my list dot length -1, right? If I want to access certain index or certain value of the so if I want to, let's say whether this runs, I want to obtain, let's say, the last value of the list, I can use this command, or else I can use a simpler command than this. So I can print this out and check its output. So what I do in this command is I'm trying to access the last element of the list that I have defined as my list. And the last element I'm taking by defining the index of the list to be the last, the index should be the length of the list -1. So length of the list is 3 and 3 minus 1 is 2. So my list inside brackets 2 will give the last element of the list. So instead of doing that, I can also go to the last element of the list by saying my list dot basically the last. So whenever you get some kind of a red word, that means there's some error in that code. So you can get the same output 101. You can get the same output using both these methods. So in Kotlin, we have that advantage of having many operation, like many commands that can give us the same function, that can give me the same output, but we have different commands to do that whatever the work, right? Whatever the work, whatever the certain work we can do using specific functions that we can define, right? So it can be last, can be something like that. So we can define the specific functions using these operations. So whatever it is, we can define, right? And then uh, we can make our code very short. So likewise, we can have some advantages with the Kotlin language. Then we also have the feature where the Kotlin language defines the variable type on its own. That means that if I define a certain variable, let's say the variable name is first, and I define the variable name and I define the type of the variable as string, then I give the value as Jane, let's say, right? I can give the value as Jane, and I can define the variable type or variable type as string. However, in Kotlin, you don't need to do that as well. You don't need to define the variable type as string, but the system will automatically take the value of the variable as string if you just define it as like this as well. So what I mean is that there's no error in defining the strings without explicitly mentioning that it is a string. So if I try to comment this one, I will just run this again. There's like not going to be any error here. So which means that if I'm going to define some kind of a variable, I can define it like without telling the system that this is a string, right? The system will automatically take the value of the variable as a string, the type of the variable as a string. Do you have any questions so far? If you have any questions, please, can you let me know? If I want to define another variable, let's say a numerical one, I will define it as int, right? So since there are many types of numerical variables, we can define them like we can define the variable to be of specific data type. It could be integer, then we can define it as integer, right? And we can say the value of the integer is age, and it is, let's say, 5 or something, right? Then we can say value of age is 5. And then uh, we can say like this, and we can run this. So I will say my age is 5, let's say. So if I try to change the value of the age in here somewhere, right? If I try to change the value of the age, then I will get an error. What is the reason for that? Do you have an answer? So in this code, I will try to change the value of the variable age. Can I do that? So, I mean, if I try to change the variable of age, right? Let's say how I do it, right? So if I change the value of variable and I will increase the age value by 1. And then, yeah, if I do like this, automatically I get certain error here. What is the reason for this error? What is the reason for this error? Right. So earlier we discussed about the different types of variables. So I mean, val is a type of a immutable variable, right? Val is a type of immutable variable, right? Immutable variables we define as val types, val data types, right? So since we have defined the age variable as val type, then that means that if I try to change the value of age, then it will give me an error, which means that I cannot change the value of age once I have defined it as 5, let's say. So it is fixed, right? We cannot change the values of some variables. And if we have set it as well, if we cannot change the values of certain variables in this Kotlin code if we use the val type. So so that is why we are getting this error. So if we are going to resolve this error, what we can do here is that we can define the age as a variable or a varying variable. Then we can see that there's no red underlining below this variable age. So now I think we can run that. Otherwise we will get an error, right? Otherwise we will get an error. Now it is working fine. If we put value in here, val type of variable in here, and if I try to run this, there's going to be some kind of error, right? And which means that the val cannot be reassigned, which means that a val type of variable cannot be reassigned with another number. Okay, so that is basically with regard to val type of variables. So, so a student has asked about, can we use Java for the Android Studio instead of using Kotlin? Sure, definitely. You can use Java. Definitely, I'm totally fine with that. So if you do the exercises using Java, totally fine for me. So go ahead and like you can use Java also for the for this app development. So definitely you can use Java. So I will try to now try to discuss about this val and var kind of variable. So why do you think that we need the val type of variables in a certain source code? val type val type of data, why do we need in that what is the reason for us to have val type of data? So the main reason that we can say is that we can have data security once we have val type of data. So data security can be maintained once we have val type of data. So if we are running a certain code and then we have set different variables to be not changed. So the values of those variables will never change. So because of that, then the code is more resilient to any kind of intermediate changes and any kind of code crashes. If the code is crashing and if the initial values are also like not fixed, then the code is not going to be resilient. However, like if you're having these val type of definitions in the code, then that means that those variables and their values are fixed. and nobody can change them, and it's very easy for us to maintain such a code, because some variables are fixed and the values of those variables will not change over time. So for data security, basically, we use the val type of variables. So we want to make sure that some variables are only read only. That means that an intermediate person cannot come and do some intermediate changes to the variable values. So the initial, whatever the definition of the variable, will remain the same, and will remain read only for the user, for the developer. So I think that with that, I think I will try to wrap up today's session. I think we will start and we will discuss about the next, basics of Kotlin and functions of Kotlin in the next session that we are having. So if you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I think you can leave. So do you have any questions that you have about this module in general, and about anything that I have discussed today?